She took the same walk every day. 2 dogs, quiet streets, no one asked questions. But this time, someone was watching. Siesta in Santa Barbara. The town sat silent in the heat, a narrow path behind her flat. She didn't see the plainclothes officers, didn't look back. By the time they moved, it was over in seconds. A fake Italian ID. A silent woman in sunglasses. No resistance. Fingerprint scan confirmed it. After nearly a decade, Britain's most wanted woman had finally been caught. She'd been gone since 2013, vanished mid-trial during one of the country's biggest VAT fraud cases. She outlived appeals, evaded capture, and stayed a step ahead for 9 years. This is the story of Sarah Panitzke and how she lived in hiding after Britain's biggest tax scam. Sarah Panitzke didn't fit the profile. She wasn't raised in chaos. There were no warnings, no violence, and no trail of trouble. She grew up in Escrick, a wealthy village outside York. Her father, Leo, was a property developer and insurance broker. Her mother kept the family close. They built her a garden bar with beer taps, a pool table, and a TV, a place for friends, not crime. She went to York College for Girls, then St. Peter's, one of the oldest private schools in the world. After that, Manchester Metropolitan University to study Spanish, and later, a master's in business management in Barcelona. At 19, everything shifted. Her father was jailed 4 years for buying and flipping council homes illegally. She moved back home to support her mother, commuting between York and Manchester, trying to hold the family together. When her father was released, she left again, back to Spain, back to the plan. But something changed along the way. In Barcelona, she slipped into a new world. Not instantly, but gradually. She had the language, she had the degree, she had the legitimacy. That's when she crossed paths with Geoffrey Johnson, the 78-year-old architect of a multi-million-pound VAT fraud network. No one knows exactly how they met. The others were scattered across the UK. Most had no link to each other, but Johnson pulled them in, one by one. Panitzke wasn't a messenger. She wasn't a mule. She handled accounts, money flow, offshore structures. She didn't just join the fraud, she helped to scale it. No one from her old life would have guessed. Not the teachers, not the neighbors in Escrick. But by the time Operation Volta launched in 2010, Sarah Panitzke was already deep inside one of the most sophisticated tax scams the UK had ever seen. The scheme was simple, on the surface. Buy mobile phones VAT-free from inside the EU, import them to the UK, sell them at full price, disappear before the taxman could collect. It's known as a carousel fraud, or more formally, missing. But Operation Volta wasn't small time. This was industrial scale. Over £1 billion was stolen. Geoffrey Johnson was the mastermind. A former tax consultant from Scotland, nearing 80, he created a network of fake businesses, shell companies posing as legitimate mobile phone traders. They moved the same phones round and round between fake companies, inflating the paper trail while pocketing VAT refunds at every stage. The scam didn't just dodge tax, it bled it dry. At one point, HMRC reported that the syndicate was trading more phones in a month than were actually sold in the UK. Operation Volta ran for years before HMRC caught on, but once they did, they moved quickly. Raids took place across the UK in 2007. 18 suspects were arrested, charges followed. The group faced trial in 2013, all except one. By then, Sarah Panitzke was gone. The fraud was vast, but it wasn't just about stolen tax. It was about making it disappear. That was Sarah Panitzke's job. She wasn't moving phones or filling out bogus invoices. Her role was after the money had landed. Her job was to clean it. She used layered bank accounts through Andorra, Switzerland, Dubai, Hong Kong, Portugal, the US. Each account added another wall, another delay, another identity. The deeper it moved, the harder it was to trace. She worked from Spain, quietly and invisibly, using masked IP addresses to control company accounts remotely. Each move was deliberate, each transaction routed through a bank chosen for discretion, not service. The illusion held because on paper, everything looked clean. The companies existed, the trades were logged, the funds were accounted for, just not by anyone real. She traveled to Dubai, Andorra, back to Barcelona, always under the radar. No posts, no paper trail, no digital footprint. In the hills near Vilanova i la Geltrú, she and her partner opened a business called Investre Plans, a local property consultancy supposedly. It gave her cover, a reason to be there, a name that looked legitimate on local paperwork. Behind the scenes, the stolen money continued to flow, millions at a time, across borders, untouched by tax or regulation. HMRC would later describe it as extraordinary volumes of laundered cash. But at the time, they couldn't find her. She wasn't at the businesses, she wasn't on company records, she was just outside the frame, always. While other fraudsters spent their cut, Sarah kept hers hidden. No designer cars, no showy houses. Her wealth was buried, and so was she. By 2013, she'd mastered the exit strategy. No trail, no trace, no arrest. One by one, the rest of the network was taken down. HMRC raided sites across the UK, arresting 18 members of the fraud ring. Their roles were traced through shell companies, bank records, and trade invoices. By the time the case reached court in 2013, HMRC believed they had everything. 18 defendants, years of surveillance, thousands of documents, bank records, paper trails, shell companies linked together by false invoices and offshore accounts. Sarah Panitzke was among those charged. She faced trial at Kingston Crown Court, accused of conspiracy to acquire criminal property, a central figure in the laundering side of the £1 billion fraud. But she never heard the verdict. Midway through the trial, she disappeared. She didn't skip bail. She hadn't been locked up awaiting sentence. She simply left and never came back. While prosecutors laid out their evidence, Sarah was already across the channel. On 22nd August 2013, the court found her guilty in absence. She was sentenced to 8 years in prison. The news barely made a ripple. Other gang members were convicted too. The combined sentences would reach 135 years. But one name stood out. Sarah Panitzke became the only woman on the National Crime Agency's most wanted list. Her passport photo, stormy-eyed and blank-faced, was posted online, pinned to airport walls, included in police bulletins. There were no leads, no sightings, no confirmed location. Months passed, then years. While her co-defendants served time, Panitzke vanished into Europe. Officially a fugitive. Privately, a ghost. In 2016, a court issued a confiscation order, but we will talk about it later in this video. Authorities suspected she was in Spain. Some believed Andorra, others guessed Portugal, but no one knew for sure. She hadn't just fled the court, she'd erased her entire presence. For nearly a decade, Sarah Panitzke lived with one certainty: she had outplayed them. She didn't vanish into the city. She didn't run with a network. Sarah Panitzke chose the edges, rural Catalonia, far from scrutiny, far from noise. After slipping out of the UK in 2013, she settled in Santa Barbara, a small town in Tarragona province. Population, just over 4,000. The kind of place where everyone knew each other and newcomers weren't often questioned. She took a new name, Maria Antonietta. The postbox outside her flat carried the alias. Her official ID too. The flat was modest, 3 bedrooms, sparse furniture, a small outdoor pool overlooked by the block's balconies. She kept to herself. No loud calls, no late visitors, just quiet routines. Grocery runs, daily dog walks, swims during siesta when the streets emptied and curtains stayed drawn. Locals later said she seemed strange, polite, distant, but disconnected. She rarely spoke about her past. never mentioned England. One neighbor recalled she tried to sell handmade satchels to a local shop, hoping for a small income. Another said her washing machine broke and she seemed upset, not because of the hassle, but the cost. She lived frugally, no signs of the money she once moved. The wealth, if it existed, was gone or hidden too well for even her to touch. There was one known call with family, a Christmas video chat during lockdown. Aside from that, silence. Even when her father died in 2020, during the UK's first COVID wave, she didn't break cover. No flowers, no message, not even for the funeral. She had become someone else. For years, the Spanish Guardia Civil believed she was close. But it wasn't enough. She was careful, disciplined, and invisible. Until 2022, when one final routine, walking the dogs, brought her back into view. By early 2022, the Spanish Guardia Civil had narrowed their focus. They believed Sarah Panitzke was hiding in Catalonia, close to Tarragona, maybe even in Santa Barbara. But belief wasn't enough. For 9 years, she had been more of a ghost than fugitive. No fingerprints, no bank cards, no movement loud enough to track. But routines leave patterns, and Panitzke had one. She walked her dogs the same route almost every day. But something slipped. A trace, never made a surface, but just enough to mark her. The Guardia Civil moved in slowly. Surveillance was quiet, long, and patient. Plainclothes officers shadowed her movements. Cameras picked up details. The flat, the dogs, the gate she always used. She didn't notice. Then came Sunday, 27th of February, 2022. It was a siesta. The streets were still. She stepped out, dogs in tow, just as she had every afternoon. But this time, they were ready. 2 officers closed in from behind. She didn't resist. She didn't speak. A fake Italian ID was found in her bag. Maria Antonietta. Her fingerprints told the truth. After 9 years, Britain's most wanted woman was now in custody. The Guardia Civil released footage of the arrest. It showed a quiet street, low sunlight, and a woman in sunglasses calmly placing her dogs back on the lead as the officers closed the gate behind her. No struggle. Just stillness. And then it was over. She was taken into custody near Madrid. For a short time, she resisted extradition, asking to serve her sentence in Spain, but the courts ruled quickly. In June 2022, Panitzke was flown back to the UK under guard. The woman who once vanished mid-trial had finally run out of road. She stepped back into Kingston Crown Court on the 10th of June 2022, nearly a decade after her name was read out in the same building with no one there to answer it. This time, there was no escape, no aliases, no Spanish sunlight or siesta hours. Just a dock, a sentence, and a court that hadn't forgotten. The original 8-year term, handed down in her absence in 2013, was activated immediately. Judge Sarah Panitzke's QC made it clear. Her prison time began that day. She would serve at least 4 years before parole could be considered, but her legal troubles weren't over. In 2016, while she was still missing, a confiscation order was made against her, £2.45 million to be repaid within 3 months or face an additional 9 years in prison. She paid nothing, not a single pound. By 2023, interest had taken the total beyond £3.7 million. It continued to grow at £538 a day, and still there is a surprise for her. Let me cover the other things while we come to the real dead end. She wasn't the only one punished. The 17 others involved in Operation Volta had already received a combined total of 135 years between them. Some had walked free by the time she returned. Others were still serving, but none had stayed out as long as Sarah Panitzke. HMRC called her role pivotal. The National Crime Agency described her as one of the most wanted fugitives in UK history. But the courts saw her as something simpler, a criminal who vanished before justice could reach her, and who now had 17 years to remember it. On 24th March 2023, at City of London Magistrates Court, a second sentence was passed, 9 more years behind bars for failing to meet the terms of that confiscation order. That brought her total to 17 years in prison. And the debt? Still outstanding. No property seized, no money recovered. Just numbers rising. And time added. What do you make of it? 17 years behind bars, £1 billion fraud, and not a single pound repaid. What do you think? If Sarah Panitzke was living quietly, underground, without luxury, where did all that money go? Should she have faced even more time? Or was justice finally served? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more real UK crime stories told like this, subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay with us. There's always another case just waiting to be exposed.